Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so excited for because I'm going to be doing a rather large book haul. Now, it's been a minute since I've done an official book haul. Well, a minute for me anyway. There have truly been so many incredible fall releases that the books in this book haul today are just like, I am on the edge of my seat to begin reading them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, starting with my September selects from Book of the Month. That's right, I'm so excited to be partnering up with Book of the Month for this video. As you guys know, I love Book of the Month so much. Their titles are always so exciting and I have so many of their books across my shelves. But if you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. Every single month they curate a selection of books, always new releases and always hardcover, and they're sent directly to your door. The selections are always super varied as well across so many different genres and voices, which I personally love because I'm always discovering new titles. Alongside their physical books, they now also have audiobooks, which is amazing. And of course, if you're uninterested in any of the titles for that month, it's super easy to skip. Per usual, I do have an offer code. If you use the code CARDIGAN, you're able to get your first book from Book of the Month for only $5. A truly amazing deal. Let's go ahead and dive into the two books I picked up for myself this month. First things first, we have the iconic blue box, and the book inside is one of my most, oh my gosh, this is, okay, hold. The book inside is one of my most anticipated releases, and the first book I picked out is A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Liang, and I have to quickly shout out like the amazing finish of this book. There's like metallic elements to the cover, and the dust jacket is butter soft. I'm in love, but this is one of my most anticipated fantasy releases of the year, so I'm thrilled to have it in my hands. It's a fantasy story inspired by the famous figure of Zixi, and she is one of the 4 famous beauties of ancient China. It is said to be an epic novel steeped in myth, womanhood, and war, and all of those inputs definitely call out to me. This is a story that follows our main character Xixi, and she is beautiful, which is considered a huge blessing in her small village. She's sort of expected to follow the typical path for a beautiful woman, marry well, and kind of bring her family to another level within society. But she's presented a rare and unusual opportunity, and that is to use her beauty as a weapon. This sounds like it's going to be full of politics, but much more like court politics, which I'm really curious about. I also feel like this is going to have a stunning writing style. The early reviews for this are so strong. I can't wait to get to this book soon. Then the second book I picked up from Book of the Month this month was one of my most anticipated sequel releases, so I'm thrilled to have it, and that is Chloe Gong's Violist Things. This, of course, is a sequel to Immortal Longings, which I read last year and was honestly super entertained by. This is like a futuristic cyberpunk-esque fantasy novel inspired by the Shakespearean tale of Antony and Cleopatra. There are so many inputs to this plot, but I personally think they work so well, creating a very plot-driven story with very interesting characters to root the book. Basically, it's set in this massive city which is controlled by one royal family. This government is incredibly corrupt and the everyday person struggles to get by. However, though, to sort of distract the populace, the government puts on this like intense competition every single year where everyone fights to the death and the winner gets a bunch of money. From there, we're following 2 characters fighting in this competition for their own reasons, and they begin to cross paths. Again, super intense, lots of action, lots of interesting politics. Honestly, I was on the edge of my seat, so I was thrilled when Book of the Month had the sequel for such a good deal because I definitely knew I wanted to pick this book up. Alrighty, those are my 2 selects from Book of the Month for the month of September. Again, I'll have a link down below to their site as well as the offer code if you guys want to learn more, but without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the books I've picked up recently. I truly have so many hype books I've picked up recently, and I'm excited to get to all of them. The first one is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I have seen this book everywhere recently. It came out in July, but I personally love reading like cozy leaning fantasy in the fall winter, so I feel like this is going to be a perfect pickup for me soon. This is said to be a cottagecore tale full of spell books, sweet friendships, sweeter jams, and love. And this follows our main character Kayla, and Kayla is not so great with interacting with people, which works just fine for her because she has been a librarian in this massive magical library for the past 10 years, and her only friend is like this sentient spider that keeps her company. But after revolution rocks the city, she's forced to flee. She takes as many of these magical tomes as she can carry with her, and she heads back to her hometown, which is this like remote island. Here she begins to set up shop and kind of make a home for herself, and a very nosy neighbor will not leave her alone and also will not stop making sure she's fed. She realizes that she needs an income, and there's something that the town is missing: jam. So she begins to make jam and like hang out with her magical books and her hot nosy neighbor. Honestly, all of these inputs seem adorable and sounds like the perfect cozy fantasy Hallmark leaning book that I need in my life. The next book I picked up is The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I read The Wishing Game by this author last year and didn't love it so much, but I've heard such good things about her newest release, and aspects of The Wishing Game I did like her writing style and her sort of imaginative concept, so I've decided to give another book of hers a try. This book is inspired by the Chronicles of Narnia, which personally one of my favorite tales growing up, and this is said to be kind of a fairy tale grown up for adults, which really called out to me. But this is a story that centers 3 characters. 2 of them are named Jeremy and Rafi, who were best friends growing up until one very traumatic event happened to them, and that is that they got lost for 6 months within a state forest, and nobody knows what happened. And for Rafi, all of his memories about this event are completely gone, and he now is kind of a reclusive artist, spending his days making his work. However, though, Jeremy does remember what happened in this forest and the sort of magical happenings that occurred, and he is now a famed missing person investigator, and he is basically contacted by our other main character, Emily, at the beginning of the story to try to find her lost sister, who has seemingly disappeared in the same exact place that these 2 boys were lost in. Now, all of these characters have to sort of work alongside each other and not only kind of confront the present and trying to find this lost girl, but also kind of rediscover the past and what happened between these 2 boys so many years ago. Again, I appreciate that this book has so many interesting, like, fairy tale influences. We have a little bit of like Peter Pan meets Chronicles of Narnia. I'm curious about this one and I'm hoping I'm going to love it. Next book I picked up is another very anticipated release by one of my favorite YA authors, and that is Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. I'm happy to report that I've already read this book and really enjoyed this book. If you're not familiar with Maureen Johnson's like style of writing, she creates the perfect mix of like thrilling, entertaining, keep you on the edge of your seat, like closed door mysteries. It also has this sort of campy, rompy feeling about them that just makes the whole experience so much fun. This is her new release and also a standalone, and in it we're introduced to our main character, Marlo. And Marlo is having a bit of a tough summer. It initially started out fantastic because she was able to convince like her biggest crush to go on a date with her, and the date itself was going so well until that is she accidentally burned down her family friend's cabin. Now Marlo is considered like the fire girl, and she's looking to get out of town to kind of lay low for a bit. Lucky for her, a family friend has a connection, and she's now working at this place called Morning House, which is this very mysterious mansion that for the first time has been open to the public for one summer only, and a bunch of local teenagers are working there alongside Marlo. However, though, when she arrives at this place, she realizes that not everything is what it seems. Not only does the house itself have a very sketchy past and a very notorious curse, but present day, seemingly some things are also sort of going wrong. This book is fun and endearing, a little bit of romance, great friendship. It hooked me. I love Maureen Johnson. Alrighty, it's time to open up one of these boxes. Oh, yes, okay. I have 2 books inside of here. The first is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I've been seeing this book everywhere, and just like the name itself called out to me, and again, feels like a perfect fall Halloween read. And this book sounds incredible. I think it's this author's sort of reinterpretation and turning on its head of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre story. And honestly, as a person who grew up in Texas and was basically terrified of this myth that existed my entire life, reading a book that's sort of re-examining this story set in a small town in Texas definitely calls out to me for a variety of reasons. But the synopsis itself sounds pretty vague. It's set in Lamsa, Texas, July 1989, and we're following 2 main characters, Tolly and Amber, and they're not on anyone's radar. They're not a cheerleader, they're not an FFA. No one really pays attention to them, and the only reason why Amber is sort of on anyone's radar is because her father recently passed away. But then bodies begin to appear in town, and over some unbearably hot days in this small West Texas town, some things occur that are going to exist through the test of time, and we'll see in movies, television shows, pop culture in general. And it says, Tolly and Amber will be famous, notorious even. Finally, everyone will know their names. And this book is written, I think, from the serial killer's point of view. I feel like this is going to be creepy, interesting. I'm just like kind of excited to pick this book up, even though I'm a scaredy cat. And like, again, the legend of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like a personal fear of mine from childhood, but you know, let's examine that a bit and read this because it sounds amazing. Next book I picked up is Foul Days, and this is said to be a mix of The Witcher meets Naomi Novik's writing style in a fast-paced fantasy plotline inspired by Slavic folklore. Again, so many inputs that are definitely very interesting to me, and I'm hoping I'm going to love this. And this follows our main character, Gusara, who is a witch, and she's used to evading all different types of monsters, trying to survive the day-to-day life of living within this very dangerous walled city. However, though, there is one monster that she cannot defy, and that is her ex-boyfriend, who is currently hunting her. Desperate to escape this city and to kind of make a new life for herself, she decides to sell her shadow, which is also the source of her power. But this has some very significant consequences because shadowless witches are prone to getting this very dangerous sickness, meaning our main character has to get her powers back if she's going to survive. To do this, she begins to partner up with kind of an honorable detective. Obviously, she's not used to working alongside these types of people, and they begin to take on the power of her ex-boyfriend. Again, I love folklore and myth-inspired stories. I also love books that center witches and magic systems and unlikely pairings for characters who have to work out dangerous problems. The sequel is also already out. I think they released both of them almost back to back. Has strong reviews. We will see what I think. Next book I have to show off is The Seventh Veil of Solomon by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is this author's newest release, and as we know on my channel, if you've watched any of my videos, this is one of my favorite authors of all time. I've quite literally read almost every single book she has put out. I love Silvia Moreno Garcia's character work, her plots and concepts. All of her books are also so different from each other, so I never know what I'm going to get when I read them. This is her newest release, and it centers old Hollywood, and in particular the making of sort of a great epic movie, which were very popular during this time period. The movie itself centers the figure of Salama, who is this ancient woman known for her beauty, passion, violence, and betrayal in her pursuit of power. And alongside the story of this figure, we also read the perspectives of two women in Hollywood, one who was casted as this part of Salama, a woman sort of plucked from obscurity and kind of thrust into the limelight of Hollywood, and another woman who dreams of having this part and will basically do anything and everything to achieve it. This is a story of fame, power dynamics in Hollywood, and honestly, it kept me captivated. I could not put this book down. Everything about it, I just feel like Silvia Moreno Garcia perfectly captured the vibe. Obviously, I've also read this, but I did pick it up recently too. I basically bought it and read it right away. Another book that just came out by one of my favorite authors of all time is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I haven't read this book yet, but that is only because it is my September book club pick. And again, if you want to join my book club, I'll have it linked down below. And this is T. Kingfisher's reimagining of the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, The Goose Girl. I love this author's writing so much. It's lyrical and magical, and her ability to rework fairy tales is just my favorite, if I'm being honest. But this is a story that follows our main character, who knows that she lives an unusual existence alongside her mother. She knows that she's supposed to have privacy, but her mother has taken down all of the doors in their house. She knows that she should be allowed to make friends, despite the fact that her mother prevents her from doing so. She also knows that she should have more freedom than she does, but her only freedom that she gets is when she rides her horse in the forest. At the beginning of the story, our main character and her mother are forced to flee the small town that they live in after some very unexpected events occur. And now they're fleeing in the night, making their way to a faraway castle and keep where her mother plans to sort of become a part of this family. Our main character is not only nervous, but suspicious about the aims that her mother has for these people in this castle. Again, I feel like this is going to be dark and delicious and windy. I cannot wait to read it very soon. Speaking of a dark and windy book, the next book I picked up is Hester. This is sort of a retelling and reimagining of the classic tale, The Scarlet Letter. And in it, we're introduced to our main character, Isabel, who has just recently arrived in the New World with her husband after they were forced to flee their home in Scotland because her husband racked up a bunch of debt. Shortly after their arrival, though, her husband basically flees again, abandoning her in this entirely new country as he takes a new job opportunity and boards a ship and leaves. Isabel herself is a very talented seamstress, and she meets a very young man named Nathaniel Hawthorne, obviously the author of The Scarlet Letter. They begin to become drawn to one another. I think this is like muse and writer sort of situation. Again, conceptually, this just sounds super interesting to me, so I'm excited to see how it's going to unfurl. But a book sort of set in the time period in which it was written with the author as a main character, I gotta see for myself. Alrighty, we have another pre-order to open. Should have grabbed scissors. The next book I have to show off, I 100% bought because my friend Monica texted me about it, and she was telling me just how much she loved this book and how perfect it was for the fall season, and I said, say no more. And I bought it. The book I'm talking about is The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands by Sarah Brooks. Honestly, this book sounds like a vibe. It is a book that is set entirely on a train. And basically, in this sort of fantasy world, there's a place called the Wastelands, which is a large, expansive land full of monsters and like beguiling magic and these types of things. And there's only one way to cross this expanse of land, and that is via a specific train. And this train is very fancy. It's not only very expensive to take this train journey, but it's also incredibly dangerous because the wastelands themselves are incredibly unpredictable. And on the last journey across the wastelands, something very unexpected occurred, and we follow our main character who has spent her entire life living and working on this train, and a new journey is about to embark. And from there, I believe we follow a variety of characters who are joining this train as passengers, including one stowaway. And from there begins to be warning signs that the fabric of the wastelands is changing. I love trains so much, and this kind of gives like closed door murder mystery Agatha Christie train vibe, but with a little bit of a magical flair. And that alone makes me want to read this so much, but obviously my friend Monica loved it, so like 10 out of 10, can't wait. The next book I picked up was another highly anticipated sequel, and that is Relics of Ruin by Aaron M. Evans. This is the second book and the final book within a fantasy duology, the first one being Empire of Exiles, which in general I feel like is a super underrated fantasy tale. This series is the perfect combination of like mystery, thriller, detective style story with a fantasy landscape and like large political conspiracy. It had so many inputs that made it unputdownable. I was hooked from page one, and I can't wait to see how the story is going to wrap up. The story itself is very, very unique and takes place within an archive within a very large city. This city has a very complicated political landscape, and basically 20 years before the start of this novel, there was an attempted overthrow of the government. This book is set in a fantasy world where there is this like very dangerous creature that has like ravaged the land, forcing a bunch of different empires and cities to flee all to this one place because there is this massive wall. Obviously, with all of these different individuals moving in, there's different power players that are trying to sort of take advantage and climb the ranks from a power point of view, resulting again in an almost overthrow of the government. But it was quelled, and all of the players were apparently dealt with. However, though, present day, we are following a variety of characters, some working within this archive, some working for the government, some working as a lawyer in town, and some crimes begin to occur that begin to point to, again, a large political conspiracy. And all of these characters kind of come crashing into each other's lives. Unlikely relationships begin to form, so many twists and turns in the plot, and just such a highly original concept that I think was executed super well. Really enjoyed book one, obviously had to grab book two when it released, and I'm so excited to read it. Another new release that I didn't even know was coming out was Moonbound by Robin Sloan. Robin Sloan is a very famous author. They wrote Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, which I read ages and ages and ages ago, but I recall really enjoying it as it's like this very whimsical and strange mystery novel with a fantasy twist. And this is like a sci-fi but fantasy novel, as it has some like very classic tropes and elements to it, and it truly sounds like something I would love. And this book is set 11,000 years in the future. A lot has changed, but also a lot has stayed the same. We follow our main character Ariel, who is a young boy who lives in a small town that is also under the control of a very powerful wizard. Ariel himself is about to set out on an adventure to maybe save the world and to save a girl. You know, a classic quest structured story. But along the way, he comes across an unexpected ally and a relic from the past, an artificial intelligence robot who has a very unique perspective on human history and just access to a lot of information. This figure is also our narrator. Again, this book sounds like it's going to be peculiar and just incredibly engaging. I love the combination of genres and tropes here, and I already know I really like this author's writing, and I just feel like this is definitely something that is up my alley. Alrighty, we are on the last box of this haul. Let's open it and see what's inside. Oh yeah, I should have known. I should have known based on what hasn't been hauled yet. Alrighty, and the very last book that is in my haul, and also one of my most anticipated releases of the year, though I know I've said that a lot in this video, is The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. Obviously, this duo of writers has written one of my favorite series of all time, The Expanse. I'm currently on the very last book of The Expanse series, book number 9, and once I complete that, I'm definitely going to dive into this right away because this is book 1 of an entirely new series. And I've also heard that this is quite the departure from the structure that we're sort of used to by this duo of authors, which honestly really intrigues me. I hear that this series is much more political, more intricate, and full of maybe some less likable characters, which I'm also very curious by. This is a sci-fi novel that first introduces us to like an empire called the Karex. They're part empire, part hive mind, and they have been ruthlessly seizing different parts of the universe for many, many years. However, though, they're a little bit spooked at the beginning of this book because there is now a new threat that's threatening them, and they feel like their only salvation is actually this group of humans on a faraway planet. So they descend on this planet and ruthlessly take like the best and brightest into their mix, forcing them to basically work alongside them to solve their threat of a faraway invading force. We follow some of those characters who were captured, who have now been taken to this faraway empire and now living alongside thousands of other species that have also been like captured as well. Again, conceptually, this just sounds really curious to me. This is also a very stunning book. Also, a little bit shorter than I was expecting, just given the lengths of some of the other books I've read by this author. Not short, it's over 400 pages. But I'm very curious to see what type of new story and structure this duo of authors is going to give me. I love their writing so much, and I just like cannot wait to read this. Alrighty guys, that is my big September book haul. I have so many new and exciting fall releases. I truly cannot wait to read. Again, big shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. If you guys want to check out Book of the Month, I'll have a link down below as well as that special offer. Thank you again so much for watching this video, and I will see you again with another one soon. Goodbye!